over to President and CEO of United Way of King County, Gordon McHenry.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, all. Appreciate all of you being here. It is another COVID day in our community, but I think it's a day where we have a bit more hope. I'm really excited to be here with our county exec, the mayor of Seattle, to announce the activation of United Way's home-based rental assistance program. It's with $5 million investment in expanding our home-based eviction program, moving that into rental assistance. This is for King County residents who are living at 50% or below area median income. It's for our residents, our neighbors who have been unable to pay their April rent. We are expecting that we can, with this program that we're starting today, can serve up to 2,000 people to help them make their April rent and to stabilize their housing in a time of incredible crisis. The way it'll work is that we're going to turn on a website. It's at uwkc.org/rent help, or a person can call 211 and get information and be connected. This opportunity, this new service would not have been possible without the leadership from our key partners, King County government, the city of Seattle, and a large number of really generous donors. They included donors to the Seattle Foundation through the Coronavirus Response Fund, donors who were motivated and inspired by All in Seattle, our corporate partners at Microsoft, Starbucks, Amazon, WaFd Bank, AT&T, and many donors who donated directly to United Way's Community Relief Fund that we started in response to the virus. I want to take a moment to thank the Seattle Foundation for their leadership in quickly standing up a cross-sector response fund. Their efforts have deployed over $10 million already to more than 120 nonprofits, and it's one of the key reasons why we're able to launch this rental assistance program today. I also want to thank a really talented set of nonprofits who will be administering these funds, getting these funds into the community where it's most needed. All of them have experience in housing stability and close connections with some of our most vulnerable neighbors. They are the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, Wellspring Family Services, Solid Ground, and Open Doors for Multicultural Families, the lead agency of a racial equity coalition that we're at United Way are proud to be in partnership with. Today is a day of hope, but I really want to make it clear that the needs in this community are growing, and they're growing rapidly, and the size of this fund will be the limiting factor of how many people we can help. We are hoping that others will continue to donate, and we'll maybe get some money from our federal partners. What we have is significant, but I'm concerned that it will go very fast. So we are encouraging those who are able to take time to donate in support of rental assistance. Another point I want to make is about racial equity. People of color are being disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 because of historical inequities that exist in our community. And that's why we are intentionally working with organizations like the Urban League, the Racial Equity Coalition, Open Doors for Multicultural Families, to make sure that these funds do go where they're most needed. And that's often our communities of color, our immigrant and refugee communities. And I think the third point I want to make is that today is about giving some stability to people who are in jeopardy of losing their homes. But we had a housing and homeless instability crisis before COVID-19. Home-based eviction program prevented over 900 people from being evicted in the past year, and we've used up those funds. Today, we're talking about rental assistance. Those monies will go fast. Our hope is that working with the county and the city and great partners, we can have a regional coordinated rental assistance in the future that helps to stabilize the housing for many of our residents in the county. So we're going to keep working on that, providing some great services in the time of response and an emergency. And we're going to work very intentionally with the county, the city, our suburban cities to have a regional program that works on an ongoing basis. So I'm going to stop here and turn it over to my friend and a strong partner, our county exec, Dow Constantine. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Gordon. Not if you can hear me. I'm really honored to be invited to join with you today in rolling out the Rental Assistance Fund. You know, as a community, at the very start of this, we rolled out some critical actions to slow the spread of this illness. We really implored people to work remotely, implored employers to make that possible for seniors and those with underlying health conditions to avoid gatherings if at all possible, and then move to really requiring businesses to shutter unless they were the most essential. And all of those things are, I think, unquestionably now making a difference in the spread of this virus. Materialized today, tragically, we still see new infections and more than a dozen of our neighbors passing away. It is a unquestionably tragic situation, but it goes well beyond the impact of the virus itself. The economic toll, the social toll is enormous, and we have to do, just as we are with the epidemic, with the economic and social challenges, we have to do everything we can to protect people, to come through this together. And we know that only by continuing the course of community-wide work to prevent virus transmission will we be able to keep our communities safe. But we also know that we have to have a long-term and determined effort to keep people from sliding backwards economically, from becoming homeless, for example. We are very concerned about the consequences of this sudden and massive economic dislocation. And that the place where that has most evidenced itself, even before this, in our region, is in housing and housing insecurity. Even as we see hopeful signs in the epidemic itself, the economic costs are clear. So many people have lost their jobs. So many people have applied for unemployment compensation. So many people have seen their hours cut. And we're very concerned about what this means moving forward. Well, the governor, first the mayor, and then the governor appropriately ordered that there would be a temporary halt on evictions. But of course, that does not mean that rents are not due. It simply means that in the very short term, people are not going to necessarily become homeless as a direct result of their inability to pay the rent. We must not let our neighbors fall into homelessness because they are not able to work during this time and thus cannot pay their rent. And we must not allow that to happen on top of the enormous housing and homelessness challenges that we already had in our region that Gordon appropriately brought forward. You know, King County is joining with United Way of King County, which has been doing a remarkable job in this arena for a long time, and with the Seattle Foundation and the city of Seattle to help low to moderate income households be able to stay in their homes, be able to weather this moment, this extraordinary moment, and remain housed. King County is dedicating $1.5 million that we were able to free up from the voter-approved Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy, donating that or devoting that to United Way's Home Base program. I want to thank United Way again for their leadership in creating this critical rental assistance in direct response to the impacts of COVID-19. I also want to thank the staff at United Way and the volunteers who will assist our residents in navigating the application process. Many of the questions I get today are about how people access the many benefits that are being rolled out at the local, state, and even federal level. We know our combined efforts today are not going to be sufficient to meet a need that grows with every day businesses can't reopen, that people can't get back to work. So I call on the state government and on the federal government to give this issue, this housing issue, this housing insecurity issue, the attention that it urgently needs. And I invite others in the community to join that list of businesses and philanthropies that Gordon laid out, a remarkable community coalition already, to join in this effort. We have to make it our collective goal that not even one individual or family falls into homelessness because of this public health crisis. Many in our community are hurting, and where we can help, we must do everything we can to help. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get through it together. Thank you, and I will now introduce the Mayor of the City of Seattle, Jenny Durkin.
Thank you, Dow, and thank you, Gordon. It's an honor to be here today, and I have to thank their partners in this, and particularly for Executive Constantine. I could not have asked for a better partner through this really, really difficult time. He and Governor Inslee have been heroic in their willingness to work together, to tackle the problems, to make the hard decisions. We know that just as we worked as a city, county, and state to protect the people who are most vulnerable to the virus because of their health, we also have to take steps to protect the people who are most vulnerable economically. And this is a start on one of the things we want to do. You know, it doesn't seem that long ago that we were at Safeco Field together, many of us, with King County Bar Association and the Mariners, talking and kicking off this program. And then the scale of the issue seems so daunting. And today it's even more so. We know that the steps we've had to take to fight this virus have been catastrophic to so many families and workers and small businesses. And while I was proud to be able to sign an order putting a halt to any residential evictions, we also have to try to make sure that as many people as possible are protected through this time, and that people do not come out of this crisis further in debt because they've lost their jobs or their livelihood. I really want to thank all of our community partners, donors who have given to this. It's incredibly generous. I'm so thankful that United Way and Gordon McHenry are taking the lead in making sure that we can get this done and implemented. And I really want to echo Gordon's statement about the importance of getting this money to those community-based organizations who are closest to the people to make sure we can get this aid to people as quickly as we can. We think that we will be able to serve thousands of families with this rental assistance. Rental assistance has been important to me since I came in. It was one of the first things we implemented, but now we have to try to scale it up as quickly as possible. I echo what Executive Constantine says. We already had a daunting housing insecurity problem before this, and we have to make sure that we do all we can to prevent this. I'm very proud that at the local level, city and county organizations and people are donating to help those who need help, but we're going to need help of a larger scale. We're going to need something greater than the New Deal to help people. And we need the federal government to make sure that it can accelerate payments to get to displaced workers and families so they can pay for rent and pay for their ordinary living expenses until we can come out of this. I agree with the executive also. We will come out of this. It will be months, not years, but we will only come out of it better off if we stay together in actions like this and really try to take care of those most vulnerable in our community. So I'm very proud the City of Seattle can join this, and we were able to repurpose some of the money in our housing levy fund for this purpose. I really want to thank Emily Alvarado and my Office of Housing, who since the beginning of this crisis have been looking for creative ways to make sure that nobody gets displaced from their housing during this very difficult time. Thank you very much, and with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
I think that's coming back to me, and I just want to again thank the county exec, thank the mayor of our great city of Seattle, my partner Tony Mestris at the Seattle Foundation, and all of the donors who stepped up very quickly and very generously to invest in rental assistance, to allow United Way to expand our eviction prevention into rental assistance. I think the greatest societal challenges require public, private, nonprofit, philanthropic partnership. COVID-19 is clearly one of those situations. What we're accomplishing today and beginning today represents a great coming together. I couldn't be prouder to be leading United Way in a community like King County, Puget Sound, where we have people who are so courageous, they're compassionate, and they're caring. And I would encourage those who've not yet heard about this or had an opportunity to invest, spread the news and invest, because the need is great. It continues to grow. We're going to put this money in the community this week, next week, and I think the need will still be there. And we need all of your help to help our neighbors in need. Thank you so much. And Anthony, I'm hoping that there's some questions, and all three of us are here to answer.
Thank you very much, Gordon. There are some questions. So we'll keep you up because the first ones are going to be for United Way of King County. Okay. From David Croman, Crosscut, from what I've seen in the past, home-based has often been offered to people who are in eviction court. How will these funds be distributed to people considering eviction proceedings have mostly stopped?
That's a great question. What we're doing is going to be an online portal. It'll be very straightforward. If you are living in the county and you're at 50% AMI or below, and there's some guidance on what that means based upon size of family, you would log in, you would identify yourself through a portal. You would provide evidence that you are behind in your April rent, been unable to pay your April rent. And then one of our case managers associated with those 5 organizations would contact that person and follow up, get the information they need, and then make a payment directly to the landlord to address the April rent.
Thank you very much. Tracy Record, West Seattle blog. Is this a separate effort from agencies that already provide emergency rent assistance? In our area, for example, the West Seattle Food Bank and Helpline, or is there any partnership with agencies like that?
As I indicated, we are starting with the partners that existed in the home-based eviction prevention program, and we've brought in Solid Ground and Open Doors for Multicultural Families as we expand the eviction prevention into rental assistance. We are very much aware of the other organizations who help with rental assistance, and we are working with the city, the county, and those other agencies to build out a more coordinated regional rental assistance program. But the first priority is to get this money that we've raised into the community as soon as possible, because it is intended to address April rent that has not been paid. And we'll continue to work with other organizations that also provide emergency assistance.
Great, thank you very much. From Pablo Gaviria from Univision. Will this aid be available for undocumented individuals, and what kind of documentation will people need to present to apply for these funds?
That's a great question. The nature of this funding does mean that we are going to hear a little bit of an echo. It is available for undocumented, our residents and our neighbors who are undocumented. There is no citizenship requirement or expectation that's required. All we need to know is that proof that you live in the county, inside the county, geography of the county, that you're low to moderate income, and that you've not been able to pay your April rent or pay all of your April rent. And certainly we want people, and that's some of the reasons why we picked the organizations we did. We want people who may be wary of working, bringing forward their needs, to come forward and not worry that citizenship is any kind of requirement to receive this money and to stay housed in our county.
Thank you. From Tracy Record on West Seattle blog, what is the maximum amount available to any individual or household?
A great question. I probably can bring my subject matter expert in on this call on this question, but basically we're using some guidelines that in part link to HUD, that link to some programs we work with at the city and the county. So it's based upon the size of the unit, in terms of the amount of money that that person will get. But the goal is to mitigate, to remove the threat of eviction because they've not been able to pay the April rent. And we could probably get more specific detail information if that's required in terms of the but it varies based on size of household and size of unit.
Thank you, Gordon. We have a few questions for Mayor Durkin, so I will hand it over to her. Question from Scott Greenstone. How much is the City of Seattle putting into this fund and from what source?
We're putting in $1 million and it's coming from our Office of Housing. We've been able to look at the resources we have available through levy and other funds and are able to use this money for that purpose.
Thank you. And then a question for the mayor about the weekend closure. Will you comment on the weekend closure of the city's 15 largest parks and beaches? How is this going to be enforced? And what happens to those who don't comply?
So first, the reason we had to do the closure is we're approaching a weekend that is going to be beautiful by Seattle terms. And we've seen already in the parks that many people are not abiding by the governor's stay home, the county executives, and my order for people to limit their times out. We're at a really critical stage at our fight against this virus. While it appears from the data that we've flattened the curve, that only means that we are today where we were about 2 weeks ago. We still have people who are getting sick and people who are dying. Some of the researchers in the area believe that at least 85% of the virus transmissions occurred from a single transmission in this region in January. So we know that the only way to beat this virus is for us to stay home and stay apart. So we are taking that step. It was a difficult decision to make, but we really know that all of us have to make sacrifices during this time. We have made so many, and we've seen those frontline healthcare workers who are working around the clock to save our community, and the people we're talking about today who have had devastating economic impacts. We want this event to be over as soon as possible. We want fewer people to die. And so taking this step is hoping that will help us double down. Dr. Fauci has said that if you think it's time to let up, you're wrong. It's time to actually put the foot on the gas more, because we have to get to a transmission rate of below 1, which means that anyone who's sick transmits it just to one person. We have to get below that and sustain it for a period of weeks before we can think that we're beyond further transmissions. So we're going to do all we can on that. Enforcement, everybody is their own enforcement. And I've been so proud of the people throughout our county and our city and our state who really are abiding by the stay home order of the governors. And we're hoping that there won't be need for enforcement. We will have park employees there who will remind people not to come into the parks. The parking lots will be locked and closed. And if necessary, SPD is there for backup. But this isn't a time for us to have to resort to enforcement. This is a time for all of us to step up and do what we need to do to keep our community safe.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to briefly interject here to remind our audience that if you are asking a question, please put your full name and the agency that you are writing for so that we can consider your question. Once more, question for you, Mayor Durkin, from Erica Barnett. Eviction prevention is a homelessness prevention tool, but for those who are already homeless, is there a plan for after the epidemic is over?
That's a great question. We have been working with the state and the county together to get us through this very difficult time. It has had a huge impact on those most vulnerable in our community, and that includes people experiencing homelessness. So we are trying to ramp up as quickly as possible, doing the things that public health has said was the most important, which included making sure that we could have less density in the shelters we did have, so stood up new shelter beds to create space for people to have that. Working with the county, and I really have to applaud County Executive Dow Constantine to stand up isolation and quarantine facilities so that if we have people who test positive or have been exposed and are experiencing homelessness or have other reasons where they have nowhere to go, that we can protect them. Obviously, we want to be able to do more, both during this crisis, but also as we emerge from this crisis, to increase our efforts to reduce homelessness. This is one tool we have, but we have to have broader-based thinking, and we've had conversations with federal government, the state government, and Dow Constantine and myself, on every conversation we have about this is, when we come out, how do we try to improve people's lives and continue in the fight against homelessness?
I just want to jump in here, if you would mind.
Of course.
I get asked this question a lot. This is Dow, and the things that are different now are that we have emergency authority at the state, county, and city level, and that we are able to make land use decisions about siting homeless facilities, et cetera, without a lengthy process. Decisions that would not be possible in ordinary times outside an emergency. And also that we are spending money that effectively we do not have. We are spending money to try to protect people and stop the spread of illness. But if we don't receive reimbursement from the state or federal government, that's going to result ultimately in having to cut critical government services, including, ironically, public health and human services. So what we are able to do in a hurry in this moment should not be indicative of what we might have been able to do or might be able to do in the future. We need to create new tools to be able to deal with these entrenched challenges. Thanks.
Thank you, Executive Constantine. We have a question from Carolyn Bick from South Seattle Emerald, which I believe will be for, this may be for Dow. Why is there no demographics data being published around the COVID-19 deaths in our region, and how does that impact the work we're trying to do?
I've asked for this to be published after I saw the data coming out of Chicago and elsewhere about particularly racial disparities in those who are becoming ill and those who are dying of the coronavirus. I asked for this. I will tell you that the information that we have so far from the State Department of Health includes racial data on fatalities, but not on those who've been infected. So I'm having our public health people dig deeper to try to get that information. 65 or more % of those who've died have been in some sort of adult congregate homes so far, nursing homes, long-term care facilities, et cetera. But the racial disparities have not been in that particular population what we've seen in other cities. I think that it's not indicative of what's going on necessarily in the epidemic as a whole within the community, with people who've been infected and are recovering. And it also doesn't tell us anything about the economic and social impacts and the difference in resiliency based on entrenched racial disparities in our systems. And so those are important questions to be engaging right now. When we get more information about the racial composition of the group of people who have been confirmed to have COVID, we will publish it immediately. Thank you.
Can I add to that? So I want to echo what he said. We've been trying hard at the city to get that information well, and not just on COVID itself, who's been infected and who has died because of it, which is critical. But we also have to keep track of that same information with regards to the economic impacts. We know that this virus on a healthcare front hit those who are most vulnerable, but the steps we had to take also have hit the people who are most economically vulnerable. And we know, as Gordon McHenry said, that means it's primarily our low-wage workers, our communities of color, who are already the ones most marginalized in our economy. So we have to get that data, not just in terms of who COVID is hitting, but who this economic impacts have been, so that we can take the steps necessary to remediate those great racial disparities.
Thank you, Mayor. Question going back to Gordon McHenry. After applying, how soon can people expect to get this assistance money?
Our goal is to get the money out within days after applying. And so again, online application, straightforward. I actually tested it yesterday, and then hearing back from a case manager, and then the money flowing within days.
Excellent. Question from Matt Markovich from Com. Do people who have filed for are people who have filed for unemployment eligible?
Yes, there's no it's independent of unemployment, so that's not a factor. And we're starting with folks who were unable to pay their April rent or pay all of their April rent, and that's what we're going to address, is that gap.
Great, thank you.
Hey,
Another
Anthony,
question.
Let me just add one to that. I think one thing that people have not noted is the work that our federal partners, particularly our delegation, Congresswoman Jayapal, Senators Murray and Cantwell, some of the things that were in the unemployment insurance benefits are going to be really important to some of the people we're talking about today, because not only are employees covered, but gig workers are covered. And if you're at a certain wage earning or below that, you can be covered for get an additional COVID bump up, which for many people, unlike previous unemployment, will cover 100% or more of lost wages. So people should look at and apply for those benefits as quickly as they can if they're eligible.
Thank you, Mayor. Question from Carolyn Bick, South Seattle Emerald. How long are these grants supposed to last the average family? And will you account for possible rent increases that tenants may not see coming?
We, Gordon McHenry here, we have designed this as a one-time grant to eligible families to address their April rent. So that's the short answer. The longer answer is that we are continuing to fundraise, and we anticipate there will be similar concerns in May. And so as I had started the conference, the size of the fund will be the limiting factor on how many families we're able to help and for how long. But we are going to continue to, we want to hopefully support 2,000 families that are struggling to make their April rent, continue to fundraise, and we'll assess where we are and be ready in May with support from this community to continue the work.
Thank you very much. Question from Nick Bowman from My Northwest, and this is for Mayor Durkin and Executive Constantine. Are there plans to provide similar payment assistance aid to homeowners in addition to renters? Executive, we'll start with you.
I'm not aware of any current plans to provide homeowner assistance other than the deferral of property taxes that I ordered last month, which extends through June 1st. We are trying to muster all of the aid that's being provided by the federal government, the state government, and available from local governments, including through our Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy, to be able to help everyone through their situation. And we are certainly, have in the mix the fact that some people will not be able to make their mortgage payments, that they may be on a fixed income that's been reduced by because of the effects of this virus. So that is an idea that we'll be working on over the course of the next couple of weeks. We do not know yet whether we have an adequate fund source to really make a dent in that. I wanted, when we're done with this question, to come back to the issue of the racial composition of the victims, the disparities in race in this, because I do have some numbers that might be of interest to people.
Mayor Durkin, would you like to address this?
I would just echo what Executive Constantine said. We have both, I think, been speaking with our federal delegation. There's many people in Congress who believe that we have to have mortgage relief for people of limited means, moderate or low income families who are able to actually have ownership opportunities. We know that ownership opportunities are a great way to pull people out of and share in some of the prosperity. And there's been some great programs in both King County and Seattle to provide that for our low income residents. And so I think I would urge everyone out there to, if they're watching this, to contact their congressperson and support that they do some broad scale mortgage relief at the federal level, because that's the only place we will to get the scale. And they have not only the ability to do it, but because they control the lending institutions and HUD, they could do it at a broad scale pretty quickly.
Thank you, Mayor Durkin. Executive Constantine, would you? Yes.
Yeah, I went back and I found an answer to this question that I said I had posed. And so this is from the middle of this week, I believe. It's this email I received on the 8th, but it's referring to data that was a few days before that. And among those who had died, it was 65% were white, 14% Asian, 4% Black, 4% Hispanic, Latino, 1% Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and then 12% they did not have data or were unknown. Again, this may not reflect the infection rates in the community as much as it reflects where the virus started. Again, about that same percentage, 65%, maybe a little more, of the deaths have been directly associated with nursing homes, starting with the nursing home in Kirkland, the Life Care Center, and several others as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Constantine. We will now hand it back to Gordon McHenry for one more question. Once again from Pablo from Univision Seattle. If someone lost wages but borrowed money to pay for April rent, are they still able to receive this aid to pay back the money they owed?
Pablo, that's a great question. I would encourage, we want to take every person and deal with them as an individual or as a family unit. So I would say don't let that stop you from applying. I also should clarify that this rental assistance program is broad enough to include formal, landlord with a rental agreement or a lease. It also works with those who are in informal housing situations, paying money to a friend or a relative. So please don't let formality or structure stop a person. If you are struggling, if you have been struggling to make your April rent, and it's because of a COVID-related situation, generally loss of income, reduced hours, layoff, please do log into our portal, explain your situation, and give us the opportunity to help you.
Thank you very much. I want to interject briefly and thank everyone for their questions today. That was our last question, and I will now hand it back over to Gordon for some closing thoughts.
I just want to appreciate all who took the time to join this press conference. This community is being devastated by the COVID crisis, economically, health-wise, and social cohesion. And it is also responding in very compassionate and supportive ways. We're going to get through this, but it does take courage. It takes all of us helping out, and I'm just very grateful for the support we received. Please continue to support the work of United Way and the county, the city, the Seattle Foundation, our partners, Urban League, Wellspring, Solid Ground, and Open Doors for Multicultural Families. And we will get through this over time. Thank you so much.